Salutations, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to RimWorld Ye Olde Knights, episode 10, where we are chopping up some Thrombos, putting their heads on a plank of mahogany to hang on our walls. You know how we be doing here at Rats Mountain. We hung up the beautiful stuffed Thrombo head right up behind the throne in the throne room, naturally, and might I just say it looks gorgeous. We also made some additional room in the crypt just in case we have any more dead nobility. And for the king and queen's room, we decided to make a gorgeous Thrombo fur rug from all the dead Thrombo we hunted last episode. But our rug weaving, unfortunately, would be interrupted by a bunch of filthy, inbred robots. We had Mechanoids falling from the sky scattered around our territory. The foolish machines naturally made a break for our walls, attempting to try and go through our murder hallway. Even the queen was almost ambushed by them, trying to get back inside to safety. Lucky for us though, she got to safety just before they could get a hold of her. Then, of course, they began coming through the murder hallway. Many of them were dropping before making it to the end, but some of them actually made it to the other side where we fired upon them with lots of bullets. After the battle, we began carrying their corpses inside to dismantle. Then we finally got to go back to weaving our gorgeous Thrombo rug for the king and queen. Busto truly looks happy with it there. But we were finished with building leisure items. It was time that we get back down to business. We began carving out a section of the mountain next to the throne room for a war room where we could plan raids and things of that sort. And of course, every great war room has a great table to plan the war on, a great chair to sit and plan the war on, and a great rug to put your feet while you're sitting to plan the war on. And just like that, it was finally ready. It was time to plan our first raid. For planning our very first raid, I brought in King George, Queen Busto, Lagua, our Silver Knight, and who I consider to be the leader of the Black Knights, Shark. We decided that our very first raid should be something simple. There is a local mining worksite by enemy faction. We decided to start there and reap all the rewards they've been mining. This may also be a good time to discuss Shark's role as a Black Knight. I kind of see him as a Black Knight captain, not really the leader. Maybe the Silver Knight is still the leader, but I don't really know how I feel about that just yet. Anyhow though, we made it to the mining work site. There were quite a few people guarding the resources, but they wouldn't be able to take us mounted on horseback with our weapons. We began riding towards the camp alongside the river until we finally encountered one of the miners and we began firing upon them until ultimately we shot them to death. Don't worry though, his friends won't be far behind. They came charging at us with their primitive knives and whatnot, and we just kind of blasted them into Swiss cheese. They attempted to flee from us, but we crossed the river very quickly and ended up shooting every single one of them dead. We found what we came for though, all the steel they had mined from the mountains. On our way back home though, we had a pretty good sized group of man-hunting panthers that were coming towards us to try and eat our eyeballs out of our heads. Thankfully though, we have the murder hallway, so of course they tried to go through that, they got cut up, and eventually they all died. We also ended up having a raccoon self-tame, and I named the little lassie Shelly. If you're wondering why, it's a secret. Not long after that, our nobility and the king returned, and they were so exhausted they decided to camp out on the ground just outside the keep. But there would be no time to rest as we quickly gathered up supplies to go out on another raid to a local logging worksite. I was hardly interested in taking their lumber. I was more interested in taking their bodies for our Black Knights Guild, and any of them that did not comply, of course, we would murder them, and, it was also kinda to make a name for ourselves, a bit of a reputation as a conqueror. The king, Lagua, and the Black Knights all gathered on their horses before attacking. We began running at them at full speed with our hammers and our rifles. We gathered around their leader and pounded on them with our hammers until they died, and then began chasing the others until we caught them and beat on them as well. We took a few prisoners from the camp, but on the way back home, we got ambushed by the local Empire faction on the planet. They said they would allow us to pass if we gave them some of our gear, but we don't negotiate with terrorists, so we engaged them in combat. The Rangers from the Empire were very vicious though, and unfortunately they shot at us and the oyster hit the ground and ended up dying, unfortunately. But Oyster's sacrifice would not go in vain. We would hunt every one of them down and kill them, or kidnap them and bring back home. One of the rangers tried to make his last stand, but the Black Knights hunted him down and started pounding on him with their mighty hammers. Poor Oyster, we hardly knew ye. Your sacrifice, as I said, will not go in vain. We will have justice for Oyster. After returning home, as you can see, we ended up having 2 prisoners from the camp who would become our Black Knights, and another who was the ranger who was part of the murder of Oyster. We took them all to their cells to await trial. Before we could carry out any sentences or trials or anything of that sort, though, we need to lay our old friend Oyster to rest. Oh, Oyster, you died as you lived. Bravely, you were a true hero to this kingdom and to our king and queen. Your service to the crown will never go unheard of, and your murder will not go unpunished. We brought the guilty ranger into the throne room, and the king carried out the sentence himself with his sword. And there you have it, justice on display for all to see and to witness what happens when you kill one of our own. Now that justice had been served, we could finally go and have a proper funeral for Oyster. And Oyster can finally lay easy in her tomb, knowing those who were responsible for her death have all been laid to rest, either on the battlefield or here today in the keep. But in other worse news, Shark, who I consider to be the captain of our Black Knights Guild, has an infection in his heart. Oh, how I hope we do not lose another of our Black Knights to vicious attacks and infections. Don't worry, a few days later he actually developed an immunity to it. He's fine. And now that we know for sure we won't have to build another tomb for Shark, or at least not anytime soon, I hope, Lumi made some beautiful artwork to lay at the foot of Oyster's tomb, as traditionally done at Rat's Mountain. A brief summarization of this artwork says something about a horde of donkeys. Ah, Oyster did truly love donkeys, didn't she? Now that Oyster was properly laid to rest, we would have to get back to working on our keep. We began digging out a treasure room. This room would be where we keep our spoils of war. We also ended up recruiting one of those recruits that we took from the camp. Now that the nice young lad had finally been rehabilitated, we could give him Oyster's spot in our Black Knights Guild. The man would take a vow, as all the Black Knights do, to defend the crown and the kingdom and all who inhabit the kingdom, so help him God. Or gods, maybe? I don't know. You know, we may be conquerors, but we are a bit of a progressive kingdom. Freedom of religion here, we don't mind. King George and a few of our other nobles decided to go out on a rhinoceros hunt, just to, I suppose, just kind of go on a fun little hunt. I suppose they enjoy that kind of thing, and we can eat whatever they kill, so that's good. Oddly enough, the 2 rhinoceros did not enjoy getting shot to bits and being hunted by other creatures. I'm not really sure why, but good thing it wasn't up to them, and we killed them, brought them back, and hung them on our meat hooks for slaughter. But not only would they make some delicious rhinoceros stew with some potatoes and whatnot, we could cut their heads off and mount it on a piece of mahogany. You know how much we love to do that here. But let's be honest with each other, what would an episode of Ye Olde Knights be if we weren't getting raided by a mech hive every, 5 or 6 days or something of that sort? We were now being raided once again by a bunch of mechanoids dropping nearby. And this time we would not hide behind our walls and let them step on traps and whatnot until they were murdered by it. We would engage them in battle just outside our keep. We whipped out our swords and our rifles and really anything else that we had to fight them as the Scythers came at us in droves. Inevitably, though, they were all defeated out on the battlefield, except for one who did actually try to go to our murder hallway for whatever reason, but Weaves caught him out there with his chain shotgun and started pelting his ass with buckshot. And if mechanoids don't tickle your fancy, we had an entire herd of bison lose their freaking minds and decide they wanted to try and nibble at our toesies or something of that sort. The bison, though, we did not engage out on the battlefield as they were animals, so was it really battling or was it hunting? Anyhow, we just let them die in our murder hallway and we'd come out and collect them to eat later. And now that that was finally over with, we'd be able to bring all our silver and gold to our treasure room or I guess the royal treasury. I'm not really sure what we should go with. I kind of like the royal treasury though. It was a small royal treasury, but with time we would expand it, no worries. And in other news, we ended up recruiting another of those recruits, wink wink, that we kidnapped, wink wink, from the logging camp, wink wink. Truly this man knew not the honor that was held with donning the black armor and the mighty warhammer of the Black Knights Guild, but he would learn and he would have to earn his place. Now with the Black Knights Guild at full power once again, we would send Lagua and Captain Shark out to lead them into battle against a local hunting work site. It didn't take us too long, and eventually we finally arrived at the hunting site, and we seen that many men were there, and those men would make a wonderful addition to our Black Knights Guild if they were to survive our onslaught. Only the toughest that survive these battles are worthy. We began galloping towards the hunting work site with the cold steel of our hammers just shaking in our hands as the horse jumped and galloped and all that stuff, and then we got there and we just beat the shit out of them. Absolutely beat the shit out of them. It's worth mentioning that the warhammers the Black Knights are carrying have a DPS of about 9.3, I think, which, unless I'm mistaken, is extremely high, I believe. Which that DPS on those hammers really explains why the Black Knights Guild is always so good at just crushing mechanoids and people's heads like watermelons. Hot watermelons, I might add. Hot watermelons under a summer sun of 1,000 degrees. You know what, I think you get the gist. They're very good at crushing people's heads. Lagua was somewhat ambushed by two of the hunters, but luckily the Black Knights Guild came to his aid from the rear. After murdering two of the three remaining hunters, the third attempted to flee from us, but unfortunately for we were on horseback with mighty weapons, so we chased them down and beat the shit out of them until they died. We took what resources they had. Unfortunately, we were unable to take any prisoners as we went a little bit overboard and murdered everyone. As I mentioned though, only the toughest that are able to survive our Warhammer onslaught are worthy of joining the Black Knight Guild anyhow, so it's fine. Wow, I just listened to the last clip and I said the Black Knight Guild. I meant the Black Knights Guild. Wow, ever so embarrassing. Thank you guys, though, so much for watching this episode. I hope you have enjoyed. I've had a lot of fun. It's really fun doing these raids. These are the first raids that we're going to be doing in this series. Hopefully, we'll be doing a lot more. I'm really hoping to try and maybe work our way up. I'm thinking, kind of the idea with the raids, what we'll do is kind of like we're going to war, obviously, like going into the war room and planning these things. I'm thinking of trying to work our way up with hunting sites, stuff like that. Maybe attack a feral settlement. You know, a feral settlement might be a good place to start as they're much weaker. Now, the problem with that is they do have things like those weird slug-looking monster things, and I think they have like some kind of ogre things as well that have these big cannons and stuff like that. So they may have some of those at their settlement, so I don't know if it would be better to start our raids on factions, at least like settlements, with the Feral faction, or maybe we should do it with the Outlander groups, or maybe some pirates. I would like to work my way up to attacking the Empire faction on the planet. The Empire faction is going to be extremely tough, as we've seen in this episode. What was it? 4 or 5 rangers, I think, 4 rangers maybe, and we were all on horseback, fully armored. We were a bit weak from the attack that we had already done, or the raid that we had already done, so that's probably weakened us quite a bit, but they still managed to murder Oyster. R.I.P. Oyster, for real. That was so sad. But yeah, I think, let me know what you guys think about that in the comments section. If you guys think maybe we should try and start with the Ferals, the Outlanders, somebody like that for our first, like, settlement raids and whatnot. Just, you know, whatever your opinions are, we could try and do that. Yeah, and if you guys have any comments, I know some people have been leaving comments already for Lagua's new position. If you have any titles for that, and I plan on giving Shark kind of like an honorary title as captain of the Black Knights Guild. I think that might be okay. But if you guys have any like thoughts on maybe what we should call the captain of the Black Knights Guild as well, that would be awesome. But I do plan on giving it to Shark for now, so I think that's kind of a definite thing I plan on doing. But once again, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're not already, and all that good stuff. And I love you guys. Thank you so much. Have a good day, guys. Goodbye.